thanks for having me here today, and I want to thank Roger for the introduction. I know things are moving along. It's a busy day on Capitol Hill. We have a 10 o'clock hearing in the committee with FAA Administrator Whitaker, and it's the first time we asked him to come. We made the invitation in December and to talk about the FAA bill, and certainly a lot has happened in aviation since then, so we're going to have a pretty busy morning. So I appreciate the chance to speak to you before then. I do want to make a note about Roger and the job he's doing in Washington State. He may be past president here, but he's still our Secretary of Transportation, and still has, I'm sure he is on speed dial in Olympia right now, since we're in session, the state legislature's in session, in a short session where all the messy stuff can happen. And so glad to have him out here. One of the questions I asked Roger earlier, or last year, I guess, when he was testifying at a hearing, if it was too early to start thinking about the next transportation reauthorization, and he responded with a resounding no, it is not too early. It's certainly a sentiment I share, and the first step in building support for that next authorization is a successful implementation of the current one, of the bipartisan infrastructure law. So far, largely, I'd say we're on the right track. We've had early successes. The president likes to say that this passing BIL created the infrastructure decade. That's fine. Every day in Washington State 2nd District is Infrastructure Day. People can wait a decade. We're not waiting. We're working every day is Infrastructure Day where I'm from, ensuring that we're putting those dollars to work in Washington State and in my district, which is North Puget Sound area of Washington State. In the first 2 years of the BIL, the U.S. DOT has distributed over $262 billion to state DOTs, local governments, transit agencies, railroads, airports, and ports to carry out upgrades and to fulfill priorities. It includes a lot of money in highway funds, $185 billion, $41 billion in transit, approximately $27 billion in rail funds, and needs to be more in Washington State. We're working on that bit, and nearly $13 billion in airport funds. These are just 3 years of a 5-year funding package, so we still have 2 more years on this current gig before we move to the next one, but we need to start working on the next one. And to do that, we need to talk about these projects. So more than 40,000 projects already supported by U.S. DOT, 490 specific projects in my own state. In the 2 years since reenactment, states have invested federal highway dollars into tens of thousands of additional projects to improve the quality of life in communities around the country. So I really, in one message, I just want to hit home. If you want BIL 2.0 or whatever it's going to be called next time, you need to be talking about it. You need to be talking about it with your members of Congress. You need to be dragging your members of Congress, whether or not they voted for BIL, dragging them to those projects so they can feel goodness in their hearts about the work that's getting done. So the next time we ask for their vote, everybody votes yes. So I really want to emphasize that to you. One thing I joked to Roger, it's not a joke, it's actually serious stuff, but we give the money to states and the states take it and take out state paint, and you paint it with state paint and say it's a state project, but it's federal money. And so we lose the credit. Make sure at least you're tying this back to your member of Congress so they know that it might be painted with state paint, but it's still federal money. So they know it, they see it, they can point to it and say it's theirs too. That ownership is going to be really critical to building for the next one. Now, while it brought record investment in transportation, the BIL was enacted at a challenging time. We're still adjusting to changes brought about by the COVID epidemic, which included supply chain restrictions, which brought high prices and delays in materials. But we are experiencing as well continued low unemployment, which is unquestionably a success story in the United States, but it also makes for an intense competition for the women and men who we need to build and maintain our infrastructure. At the same time, we presented to U.S. DOT a very significant challenge to stand up dozens of new initiatives, issue policy guidance and standards, and award billions of dollars in grants. Project sponsors are navigating these new opportunities that are available thanks to the BIL, and many first-time grant recipients could use technical assistance from U.S. DOT and state DOTs to make best use of those funds. So my door is always open to AASHTO and your members as we work to maximize the success of BIL while working through these issues. I want to address a few issues that I know are important to you all. One area I understand is important is streamlining the discretionary or the competitive grant process. And I recognize that state DOTs are always looking to maximize the funding that flows to states via formula, and I appreciate your efforts to improve the competitive grant process. AASHTO's proposals to make the NOFO schedule more predictable is something I share. As a member of Congress, we want to be enhancing the role that the communication USDOT uses on NOFOs to improve the chances our folks in our districts apply for these grants. So I really appreciate that. Bringing more uniformity to project criteria as well, and fostering better coordination between state and locals is important. USDOT has taken a step in the right direction. It maintains a website showing the dates of upcoming opportunity announcements and bundling funding announcements together so applicants have a little less paperwork to be considered for more funding streams. These are good steps, more steps to be taken. I know that some AASHTO members as well have expressed concern about new greenhouse gas performance measures created by the federal highway folks. And I support states in your call for continued flexibility to select projects based on unique populations, geography, and density, but complete inaction is not an option. That said, on greenhouse, the transportation sector is the #1 source of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. Solving that problem is not the role of the state DOTs alone, but it does require your partnership. Thank you very much. Oh, make sure to take the M&Ms out of the bowl in my dressing room as well. Appreciate that for the show. So, sorry. It's a Van Halen joke from 1983. There you go. For those who know Van Halen. For those who don't know, let me explain to you Van Halen. So back to it does require a partnership to address this issue. And Federal Highways has created a performance measure that relies on existing data, allows states to set individually tailored and non-binding targets, and does not penalize states for failure to meet those individually set targets. The requirement to measure carbon emissions and set targets does not dictate your transportation options. Project scoping and selection remains the choice of each given state. I believe it's a fair approach and a limited but meaningful step in the right direction as we deal with climate change. And I'm happy to work with states. If you find that this new policy needs to be more workable for you, but I hope we can all undertake good faith efforts to implement this new performance measure. I want to now move to August redistribution, something Roger's taught me all about. So if I get it wrong, but this morning I wrote 2 jokes about August redistribution, and you're the only people in America who will understand these jokes. All right, so the first one is, obligation limitation and contract authority walk into a dark room. And one says to the other, something's off. Hey, that's what you get. Don't hiss me. This is over a toothbrush. I was brushing my teeth. All right. The other one is, and based on the same theme, obligation limitation and contract authority mistakenly walk into a convention of left-handers, and one says to the other, something's not right. So that's what I know about August redistribution. But I know many states, including our state, the great state of Washington, plan strategically each year to take advantage of redistribution to get more projects off the ground. I understand that given the significant growth in the last few years in the amount of funding that gets redistributed, it gets harder, the burden gets it becomes a burden rather than a blessing for states to commit that much money in a short time frame as the two OBLIM and contract authority come up against each other. So I appreciate the work AASHTO's done to try to provide us some solutions. It may be the solution, there may be other solutions out there, we'll sort it out. I'm committed to working with USDOT and you all and my colleagues in Congress for the few of us who are required to understand this to find a way to improve that process. State DOTs are some of the biggest winners under the BIL, and 90% of the federal highway funds flow to you all in this room. And having over $300 billion at your discretion means that people in this room, you have great power to shape transportation systems and communities over the next several years. Several areas where you can put your power to work and make changes are in a variety of places. One is to foster the next generation of transportation workers. We have the opportunity with the BIL to expand the ability of states to use their formula dollars for a host of workforce development activities, including apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships, outreach to students, and tuition assistance for community colleges and vocational schools. Congress made sure states could invest those dollars right away by allowing 100% federal share and no required local match. It's very important. This is a long-term thing. I know it's hard to look at like anything but the next year or so, but we need to have that next generation workers ready today so they can be working for a long time. So I really want to emphasize that. Roger spoke about that at our hearing. There's a Washington State initiative to help women, people of color, and folks who are socially or economically disadvantaged, including those in juvenile justice or foster care, to learn the necessary skills to become those iron workers or those maritime crews or in other trades. So it provides opportunity for higher wages and fulfilling careers as well. This type of investment is going to pay dividends in the long run by making sure we have a more stable workforce and that more Americans can benefit from the jobs that BIL creates for them. And according to the recent survey conducted by Federal Highways, 25 out of 47 states that responded to the survey have either committed formula funds to workforce training or have a clear plan to do so in the future, and I ask all of you to look at that possibility. The second opportunity is the opportunity to innovate. State DOTs have very different roles than you had 50 years ago, and adapting to and combating climate change, ensuring equity, promoting mobility, successfully incorporating technology. The role of AI in transportation is rearing its head beyond autonomous vehicles, well beyond autonomous vehicles, and of course tackling the sustained highway safety crisis. These are challenges for you today as state transportation officials. I'd like to think we're leading the way in our state in a variety of ways by building low and no emission ferries to reduce air and carbon pollution. Several DOTs are using grants under the Reconnecting programs to help mitigate negative consequences of past infrastructure decisions and build safer and more connected neighborhoods. Some states have explored flexing part of their federal highway funds to transit for preventive maintenance to help agencies continue to evolve. BIL funds are supporting state-led projects for transportation microgrids, using data to make work zones safer, using digital construction management to deliver projects more quickly. All that is great work. It's innovative work. It's how it's going to be done in the future, and I appreciate it. I want to go back to where I started about your another opportunity, the first opportunity I mentioned, and that is promote BIL projects. We all have issues with BIL. I have my own issues with it, but if you want to do this again, if you want continued sustained funding over time, you need to be communicating to all members of Congress about what the BIL is doing in their districts. They might have problems too with BIL, and I get it. I'm on the committee, we get it, hear it all the time. But right now, we have all members of Congress on both sides of the aisle talking about what will the next one look like. That's a victory. I'm going to take that victory. I'm going to run with it. And so now we need to start putting some meat to the bones on that. So with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come speak to you this morning, share a little bit of my horrible sense of humor, and go from there. I think I have time for a few questions, if that's possible. Anyone has questions? I love it. You got a free shot and you're not taking it. I love it. You know. Yeah, maybe you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm John Susong. I'm with Record Materials, and I live in Indiana. What do you think? Where's Congress's mindset right now on focusing on the next bill? You know, what do you think? Is it half the people there, a quarter? What do you think, Paul?
I think on the committee, on Committee on Transportation, we're all getting socialized, used to the idea that we get to do this again, and we're going to do this again. That's, as I noted, that's really as far as we got. There will be an opportunity to flesh that out. We're starting to do some hearings. There's a hearing next week on Highways and Transit Subcommittee on some things. But I think where I want to be is we've been pretty bipartisan in this Congress and in this committee. Stay focused, people. In this committee, Next year, it's a new Congress. We might be in the majority, we might not, but either way, we want to continue that. We want to be that island of partnership in a sea of partisanship in Congress. It's easier to do that when you're spending money on projects in your district, truthfully. But I think we can build on what we've been doing this year on our process, which has been very member intensive, and use that same process going forward into developing whatever that next, at least out of the House with the next version. So we'll do something, and the Senate will cut it in half, claim credit, and send it to the president. All right? No. Sorry, that's what happened this past with BIL. But we're starting, and it's encouraging to hear people talking about what the next one will look like. Other members on both sides. Yeah. Yeah, great. Oh yeah, sure, up front.
What do you think might be the role of resilience in the next bill, given it's very much a bipartisan issue as we re-engineer the infrastructure of the future?
Yeah, I think there are a few areas where we need to think about what the future of infrastructure looks like, how it's made, how it's used. And again, I don't mean this as an insult to anyone. There's a lot of legacy users in transportation. And some of those folks are, I would say, they want it to be like it always is. But that's fine, except the technology is changing. And so it's not going to be like it always is. And we can't stop those changes taking place. And so we have a responsibility on the committee to say, okay, that's happening. What does that mean for, ultimately, what does it mean for safety? So like you might say, what's it mean for construction? I would say, what's it mean for construction standards that have the same level of safety? That's our job. And we can't ignore those things. We have to incorporate those changes as technology is used differently in transportation. And we're going to do some work on artificial intelligence this year in preparation for next year. And I'm starting to poke around on what's being done. And I think it might be at Carnegie in Pittsburgh, and they're looking at using big data sets to test new construction materials for bridges, right? Because you don't want to test that on a bridge, right? But it's being tested for these construction materials they're less carbon intensive, but if you can get a less carbon intensive building block, literal building block, that is as strong or stronger, then you get a twofer, and why wouldn't you do that? But you need to be able to test that in a safe environment. And so we need to start thinking about that and many other things moving forward. So I would just lay that out for folks. We did this in aviation a couple years ago with drones. Our committee was kind of out ahead a little bit of FAA and said, we need to start thinking about how these drones are going to get incorporated safely in the airspace. We're doing that with electric vehicle takeoff and lift as well. I mean, how is this, it's going to happen, how do you incorporate it? And that question is an important question for surface transportation, for aviation, for rail, for a lot of things. And we need to shape the laws to give direction to the agencies that this is how we want them to think. That's generally how I'm thinking about it. Thanks a lot, appreciate it.